Hi everybody, I'm Robin Neal and this is The Second Thought, real talk about addiction and recovery from both sides of the fence. For this episode, I thought that I would bring back a post that I made a couple of weeks ago, which is tips for families of addicts during the holidays. Now, if you're watching this on video, I am reading from notes. This is the post that I made a couple of weeks ago, and it's got a lot of information in it, so I am going to use that as reference. However, the stories that I'm going to talk about are my own stories lived through my own experiences as an addict, as well as a family member of different addicts in my life. So to start, the holidays are a merry time to spend with family and close friends. However, for many, spending time with family means also spending time with a family member struggling with addiction. This can put a damper on the joyous family get-together, and that event can quickly turn into arguments and finger-pointing. If you intend to include a family member struggling with addiction in your holidays, there are a few things to consider. First and foremost, you need to understand that you are in control. The family can decide whether to include a loved one struggling with addiction or not. The decision should be made to honor the emotional and mental health of all involved. And yes, that means including the addict. The following are some tips for family members of those living with addiction. This is a mix of experience and research, as I said. So the first tip is to accept your situation. If you focus on your hope that relapse will not occur during the holidays and that things will magically be perfect, you may be setting yourself up for an emotional disaster. While we can believe this time of year should inspire change, growth, and greater awareness for the addicted person, unfortunately, the opposite can be true. The holidays are stressful, and someone struggling with addiction may very well harbor the same unrealistic expectations for themselves, which causes further stress. And stress is the number one trigger for a relapse of any kind of bad behavior, and especially substance use. So remember, addiction is a disease. It has no connection with you as a family member's ability to love the addict or love the person struggling with addiction. Recovery can only occur within the person themselves. Now, this is a huge one. I always say the number one key to dealing with addiction as a loved one is 0% expectation and 100% acceptance. If you're in denial about the situation, if you want to put on rose-colored glasses, what you're going to walk into is the possibility of a huge heartbreak. Depending on the situation, if your addicted loved one is actively using addict or an addict in new recovery, or even somebody in long-term recovery that may be going through different stressors in their life, the holidays add an undeniable amount of stress to an already stressful situation. To not accept that, to not honor that, to not be true to that, and to put on those rose-colored glasses of denial or just awash thinking that somehow this magical time of year is going to fix a situation is just going to potentially, very potentially, lead to heartbreak, miscommunication, and basically just a blow up of every bad emotion that you do not want in this situation, number one, but especially in this situation around Christmas time, when everybody already has the wonderful Christmas spirit within them. Not accepting your situation and walking into it with blinders on is going to be a great way to just blow it up in everybody's face. So 0% expectation, 100% acceptance. Tip number 2, manage expectations. Experts almost universally agree that one of the most important steps families with substance abuse issues can take is to explore their expectations for the holidays. Far too often, families have expectations that don't reflect reality, but are rooted in holiday commercial portrayals. Holding on to ideas of perfection, such as that the addicted family member will magically be cured for the holiday season, can be a recipe for disaster. That's because the inability of a family member to meet these expectations can lead to even more fear, stress, anxiety, and despair. False expectations can build up around a recovering addict as well. Once a loved one goes into recovery, his or her family members may expect them to be joyous and outgoing when they may be really struggling with the effects of living in recovery. Family members need to be sensitive and compassionate and understanding about that. So talking about expectations, I have this picture in my head of this one wonderful Christmas that I had. I was 9 years old. It was the last time I actually saw my mother and my father in a room together. And for just a few minutes, as we were decorating the Christmas tree, Christmas Eve, everybody was dressed up. We were going to midnight mass later on that night. And for this few minutes of this memory, my father was sober, or relatively sober. The family was getting along. My mom and my dad were actually talking. And it was like this beautiful Norman Rockwell moment that I had in my childhood. Now, it was one of the only moments like that I had in my childhood because my father was very heavy into his addiction my entire life. So I hung on to that for years. And every Christmas after that, I just magically wished that somehow my dad would come around and be able to recreate those 15 minutes again. That somehow I would have that family again. Somehow I would have that magical moment. Long story short, it never did. He never came out of his active addiction and he died in his active addiction. So hanging on to that, while yes, it was a beautiful memory, but it wasn't a real memory. Because those 15 minutes that I had didn't represent the rest of the night when my father got inebriated beyond all belief and ended up blowing up the entire party. So hanging on to that, did it do me good or did it hurt me? You know, maybe it did me well because I do have one loving, wonderful memory of Christmas with both of my parents in the same room and not trying to kill each other. But in actuality, I hung on to that for way too long. Nobody ever taught me acceptance. Nobody ever taught me as a child to manage my expectations. So when I got older as an active addict, I somehow believed that I could pull it together for Christmas and go back to see my family and manage to be okay. Every single time I tried, the whole situation blew up in my face, and it was never good. Because I walked in with expectation and zero acceptance. You need to manage your expectations to something that is realistic for every person involved. If you have family members that don't want to be around your addicted loved one, that has to be managed correctly. If you have an addicted loved one that doesn't want to be around family, that has to be managed correctly. If your addicted loved one who's in recovery says they only want to be around the family for 1 hour, that's fine. Manage those expectations and accept what everybody is willing to and able to put in to the holiday season. No resentment, no expectation, or very low expectation, or reasonable expectation is going to be the key to having a successful event that holds everybody's mental health in high regard and keeps everybody's safety and stability at the front thought constantly. Tip number 3, handling actively using addicts. Now, this is a huge question I get all the time. If my husband or my son or my daughter or my father or whoever is in active addiction, do I include them? There is no right or wrong answer to that, and there is not a black or white yes or no to that. So the tips from the experts, family members have the decision to face if the addict in their lives is still actively using. Family members have a right to be concerned about the physical and emotional safety of others, especially children, who may attend holiday gatherings with an actively using person. If a family decides to allow an addict to attend gatherings, firm ground rules around behavior need to be set and communicated before the event. Families also need to be prepared to follow through with consequences if the boundaries are crossed. Families must also face the possibility that the addict may not want to attend holiday activities. If this is the case, the best thing to do is not push. This can make things worse. Now I've got a story about this, man. Christmas 2019. My husband was blown into his first relapse, and I mean hard. And for whatever reason, his family, his mother and his father, both in recovery, his girlfriend at the time, me, in recovery, decided that we would put on our glasses of denial and pretend the whole thing was not going on for one night. His parents pushed him into attending a Christmas party. I went along with it because even though I know better, it wasn't my family, so I decided that I wasn't going to say anything. I should have, but I didn't. And during the night, we were there for about 3.5 or 4 hours. The first hour was fine, but him being in active addiction, he had to keep using so that he wouldn't be so stressed out that he would blow up, and that he could actually handle just being around anybody. And as the night went on, the expectations grew because the first hour, like I said, was really nice. Everybody just expected the rest of the night to go great. Well, as his use continued during the night, everybody started to figure out what was going on. Everybody started to talk about it, and then all of the resentments came out. All of the anger came out. And by the end of the night, the whole freaking 40-person family party had just devolved into a screaming fest with him and I storming out, yelling profanities both ways between his parents and me and him out the door. Long story short, expectations ruined that event. He was an actively using addict. He didn't want to go. That should have been honored. But they wanted one Christmas card moment, and they thought they could get it with somebody in active addiction. Both of his parents being in recovery, they should have realized that that was not the case. Me being in recovery, I should have said something, because in the end, all that happened was everybody's mental and emotional stability and safety was put on the line for the chance at getting one Christmas card moment. There was no Christmas card moment, I will tell you, unless you want to call the litany of swears a Christmas card moment, which I don't think any sane person would. So just remember, if you do have somebody in active addiction, put boundaries around behaviors. Behaviors you can see, not behaviors you can't. If somebody goes to the bathroom for 20 minutes at a time every freaking hour, that's a behavior that needs to be monitored. And if that's the case, enact your boundaries, ask the person to leave. Just frankly say, this is done, the night is over. Or if the behaviors become belligerent, then maybe that person has to leave. Conversely, if the addict in active addiction doesn't want to be there because they don't think they can control themselves, honor that. It is not worth the chance of a Christmas card moment to have an entire family blown up and ruined for potentially the next month or two, or God only knows how long, for the chance at a Christmas card moment. Accept what's going on, manage expectations, and come to it truthfully, really truthfully, if the addict is in active addiction. This is not a time for us to pretend. Addiction is no joke. It can ruin people's stability. It can ruin people's mental health. And just for the chance of something nice to happen for one night, it's not worth it. So know what you're walking into. Set up boundaries if you decide to have somebody in active addiction around family members, but then be honest and be truthful if either the addict or a family member decides that that participation needs to end. Have a way to do it seamlessly and firmly, but lovingly. Hold your boundaries and just end the night if that's what needs to happen. Tip number 4, support for the recovering addict. It is natural for a family to be concerned that a loved one recovering from addiction may relapse over the holidays. The family's approach to relapse prevention must be one of balance, one that takes the threat of relapse seriously without stifling the recovering person. If possible, be involved in the recovering person's relapse plan with them and their coach or sponsor to ensure that everybody is on the same page during family events. The recovery plan should be formulated by the addict and their recovery system, but family involvement is still important. Now, I'm going to pause here and make a comment. It is always taught in family programs that we need to stay in our own lane, and that is true. It is the addict's recovery for them to manage, for them to handle, and for them to do. However, asking an addict that is going to be sharing your time and sharing your space during the holiday season to share their recovery plan and to share their relapse plan is definitely allowed, and it is still staying in your own lane. Because you are not going to tell them if that plan is right or wrong. It's not your plan, it's their plan. But you do want to know what's on that plan. If they have a sponsor or a coach that is not going to be at the event, share the phone number. If something starts to go south, that's a person that can be called in for reinforcements. That is a person the addict has chosen to have in their lives as that support system. And calling them in is staying in your own lane. Asking them for support is staying in your own lane, because you're not directly standing in front of the addict, telling them what they should do, offering suggestions. You're allowing their recovery system to do so. I have two wonderful sponsees as a person in recovery, a person in long-term recovery, and you can be damn sure that their family knows me, that the family that they're going to be spending Christmas with knows me and has my phone number. And even though I'm going to be doing my own Christmas thing, I'm going to be there for them if they need me. That is my role as a sponsor and as a coach. It is not their family member's role to step in if the addict's mood takes a nosedive. It's their role to bring me in, because I'm the one that knows their story the closest. I'm the one that's walking their road of recovery with them. I'm the one helping to guide them through difficult situations. So if the family party is a difficult situation, it's not up to mom or dad to step in and play coach. That is not staying in your lane. But to bring in reinforcements from the person's recovery system, that is absolutely 100% allowed and in fact encouraged. As a sponsor, I might spend time over the holiday season, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, with my sponsees and their families, because frankly, we're all in this together. And if everybody's on the same page, everybody gets to heal together. And that's the important part. Going back. Enacting the addict's recovery prevention or relapse prevention plan and involving the coach or mentor or sponsor is an important step families can take. All right. Point number 2 on that. If alcohol is an issue, have a family meeting about the possibility of hosting a sober event. Families should also realize that not all members of the family will be happy with the presence of a recovering person. This should be managed by the family as a whole, with clear boundaries established for the continued emotional health of all involved. Be upfront and honest about who will be attending, and allow all affected to make the decisions that are right for them. One of the things for me when I was in my active addiction and early in recovery, one of the huge triggers for me was my big brother, because he was an active addict the same time that I was. And if I would go into recovery and then he would be in active addiction, one of us would relapse, the other one would be okay. That was just our story for a number of years. But having us together in the same room a lot of times was a bad idea during that stage. And there was one particular event where my aunt decided she wanted to get the whole family together, so she was just not going to tell each of us that the other one was going to be there. During this particular event, I happened to be in a clean cycle. My brother was in an active addiction cycle. Seeing him there was enough to trigger me to turn around and walk out. Because if I didn't turn around and walk out, the next thing I was going to do was grab a bottle and start chugging. Because he and I related to each other in such a poor way at that point. We spurred each other on in our addiction, and when one of us would hit recovery, just seeing the other was enough of a trigger to bring all those events right back. So in the hopes of a moment, my aunt decided that she was going to be not quite honest and she was going to just have us there and hope everything was going to be okay. Long story short again, it wasn't. I removed myself from the situation. I stayed in that clean cycle for a little bit longer, not too much longer, but at least in that moment, I had the sense to extract myself from the situation. So don't put anybody in that situation. If you have a family member that is at odds with the person in recovery, be honest about it. The last thing you want is for somebody in recovery to be triggered by dishonesty and then to turn around and relapse. No, that is not your fault if that happens. It is the addict's fault to choose to not turn to their support system in that situation. But it is a situation you don't want to have a part in, you don't want to set up at all. So honesty is always the best policy. Let everybody make their own decisions as to how they're going to handle the event and what's going to happen. Next tip, choose self-care over additional responsibilities and activities. Basically, long story short, you're not Superman or Superwoman. Neither am I. As the wife of an addict, as an addict myself, I know my own limitations. And I know that I have to be strong so that I can walk into different situations. You can bet if I'm going to go over to see one of my sponsees and their family during the Christmas events, I'm going to fill my cup first. I'm going to go to meetings. I'm going to spend time with other people in recovery. I'm going to read my literature. I'm going to do what I need to do so that I'm strong enough to help somebody else, to walk into even my own family's events so that I can handle it the way that I need to. I'm going to practice self-care. As the wife of an addict, I'm going to make sure that I practice self-care, talk to other wives, other family members in recovery, so that if he gets squirrely or he goes south, I'm not going to let it personally affect me. Huge thing, practice self-care. You cannot pour from an empty cup. That is absolutely a slogan. It is absolutely 100% true. I have never found a situation where that rule does not hold. There is, as far as I'm concerned, there is no exception that makes that rule. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Next tip, reach out for help. This goes with the self-care. Absolutely, the same way that an addict has a call list, family members need to have a call list. Other people, other family members in recovery that you can reach out to, FaceTime even, if things go south. Because if your addict, your addicted loved one, comes into a family event, they get squirrely and they end up leaving. And then you came into it with expectations, your expectations are blown, and now you're having a craptastic night. Turning around to another family member that does not understand recovery is not the way to go. Turning to other people that understand addiction, that understand recovery is absolutely the way to go. So the same way that I have a call list of my brothers and sisters in recovery, I have a call list of family members in recovery that I can turn to. And I know they will pick up the phone. I know they will answer my messages. These are not people that I have met once or twice. These are people I have spent years of my life with. They're going to be there for me the same way I'm going to be there for them. That is absolutely 100% necessary in case things go south. And you know what? If things go great, turn to your support systems and share that with them. Maybe if you had a great event, they didn't. So absolutely share the joy the same way you share the struggle. And the last tip, have faith that you can make good memories and celebrate again. Addiction is a chronic disease, but it can be arrested and managed. Yes, there are occurrences of relapse, but many addicted persons find long-term recovery through the successful working of a program. You did not cause your loved one's addiction, and you cannot control it. Being able to release with love and without guilt is so important. You have to accept that you are not responsible for whatever happens, but you can continue to grow, make good memories, and celebrate life during the holidays. Going back to the example of my father, like I said, my father was in active addiction my entire life. He passed when I was 28 years old in active addiction. It took a long time for me to realize that I could have a family, that I could have a Christmas. I could have one celebrating with my mother. I could have a Christmas with my in-laws. I could have happy memories and not remember the bad times. I could let go of the bad memories that I have, my father blowing up a Christmas, or my brother blowing up a Christmas, or me blowing up a Christmas, and that it would come together. That Christmas that I talked about, December 2019, where my husband was in active addiction, that was a bad Christmas, ain't gonna lie. Took us months to put the family together afterwards. He did end up getting clean April of 2021, April of 2020. And Christmas 2020, we made the decision as a couple not to attend any events. We were in a COVID lockdown, but there were some small events going on. We stepped out of all of those. And Christmas of 2021, we actually attended our first Christmas family event in 2 years. We're gonna attend another one come Christmas Eve. We're making the decision that we're going into those events because we feel as a couple, him in recovery, we are ready to. And that's fine, that's good. However, we're also going in with boundaries. We're going to stay for 1 hour, and then if that hour works, we're going to stay for 1 more hour. Probably not more than 2 hours, because that's about all we can take. This is the first family Christmas that we've been back together since he's been clean. So everybody's walking in with no expectations, a lot of hope, but a lot of acceptance. And by doing that, we hopefully are going to have a wonderful memory to build on. But if we don't, if it ends up just being me and my husband together again this year, that's fine. Because we actually had a great Christmas last year. Calm, quiet, with a small takeout Chinese dinner. That's what we needed. It was his Christmas last year to rebuild as a person. Now we're going to start to rebuild as a family. But that first foundational brick that we are laying this Christmas, that first step is not a huge step. It's a little step. And it's the first brick in a whole house of recovery that we're going to put back together. It's going to take years. It took years to blow up the family. It's going to take years to put it back together. But by going in with understanding, compassion, love, care, and acceptance, everybody on the same page, everybody having discussions now, today, me, his mom, his dad, his family, his brothers and sisters in recovery, my brothers and sisters in recovery, everybody coming in on the same page is the best chance that we have to start to rebuild our family one moment, one event, and yes, one Christmas at a time. So open up your hearts to compassion and love and acceptance and understanding. And that's how everybody gets through it together. And remember your support systems. Just like as an addict, I have a support system. As the wife of an addict, I have a support system. Call upon them when needed. But the most important thing is to just take those little moments of joy and love as they come. It may not be the Christmas card moment you thought it was going to be, but there are going to be little moments of laughter. There's going to be little moments of happiness. Wherever you find them, hang on to them. Because 30-something years down the line, I do still have that 15 minutes when I was 9 years old. And I don't hang on to it with regret or remorse or resentment. I hang on to it with love. Because for that one shining little moment, my dad was a good dad. And that's okay. Because I choose to remember him that way. Even if just for that little bit, I got a good dad for a small moment. And I hang on to that. And that fuels me, has fueled me for 30-something years, and is going to fuel me for the next however long that I'm on this earth. So remember, everybody, Christmas is a season of love and joy. Bring in acceptance and understanding, and there you've got the recipe to actually put a nice Christmas together. So thank you. Namaste.